Yeah, ready, go. I'm going to talk all about Spider-Man and its long, long history. Peter Benjamin Parker was a mild-mannered, timid, wimpy nerd. And then he got bit by a radioactive spider because science did that in the 80s and it was really weird. And he gained some weird spider powers from his spider bite. And he went on to use these powers to try and become a famous wrestler, because that's how you make money, apparently. But in his own hubris and greed, because he didn't stop a crime earlier happening, that same criminal shot his Uncle Ben, and he felt a massive amount of guilt, which is pretty much all Spider-Man feels. It's why he's really crying in the first three Spider-Man movies.
They forgot the sass and just left the crying. Yeah,
he just cries, and it's crying, and it's crying, and it's like his sad face.
His big weird watery eyes.
Yeah, and from there, by living under his uncle's motto, with great power comes great responsibility, he went on to become the amazing, spectacular, sensational, bombastic, superior, ultimate, and there's probably a fuck ton more, because he has so many nicknames, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Throughout history, because he's been in comics since, like, a long time. I think it's longer than the 60s, because that's when the cartoon show came out. One of the first heroes who wasn't a full-grown adult and was a teenager on his own, and that was a big thing because comic book publishers didn't think a teenager could like carry a flagship hero series. And Spider-Man was the first one. Without Spider-Man, there wouldn't be people like the Teen Titans, the other teen heroes with all their drama problems. Along with that, throughout his like classic history, has introduced a multitude of classic villains that pretty much everyone knows, like the Green Goblin, who was introduced in both The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, and then again in Spider-Man 3, but no one remembers that movie for a good reason. And along with Mysterio, who is one of my favourite villains because he's basically a magic man with lots of special effects and no magic powers, and a weird fishbowl head. That makes no sense because it looks really silly. Mysterio and
Doc Ock.
Yeah, Dr. Octopus, who has become even more of a dangerous villain recently because of a recent event I'll go on to explain later. Electro, who was introduced, played by Jamie Foxx, pretty well in Amazing Spider-Man 2. What?
He has the power of dubstep.
Yes, he does have the power of dubstep. That's what it looks like in the new movie because lightning effects need to look like dubstep now. Kraven the Hunter, who was a big-time game hunter who started hunting superheroes, and the first target was, of course, Spider-Man, because he's the most animal-related hero that you can find in the savannah.
I'm gonna hunt this giant lion. No,
yeah.
I'm gonna hunt this tiny man.
Yeah, tiny. Along with the Vulture, who is an old man with a suit that makes him fly. He's kinda lame. Like, really lame. And then the Sandman, who was featured in the third Sam Raimi movie, and it's like the only good thing about that movie. Yes. And those 6 villains, who were the first ones to be introduced, formed the Sinister Six, who was Spider-Man's first like big villain team-up, which I think was probably the first time to do that with villains, or at least one of the first times. At least in Marvel Comics, because there was always the Avengers, but they would fight one guy and not multiples of guys. Or it wouldn't be one hero against multiples of guys. Because Spider-Man's whole thing is being a tiny, tiny man against giant odds, and then beating those giant odds while probably getting punched in the face a lot. Those big events. Anyone who hasn't seen Amazing Spider-Man 2, cover your ears and look away now. Thank you. Do that. Look, I'm serious.
You really don't want to hear it if you haven't.
Spider-Man's first girlfriend, known as Gwen Stacy, was featured in Spider-Man 3, not really important, The Amazing Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and they featured the classic scene of Gwen Stacy dying. Exactly. You'll find out. But she died, and it may or may not have been Spider-Man's fault, because she was falling.
I don't think it was his fault.
And he tried to web her as she was falling, and he like sort of caught her around the back, and there was a crack. But if you just let her drop, she would have died, but if you did try and catch her, she might have survived. So basically, when Spider-Man got more into it, there was even more guilt on him, because that's all that Peter does. He's just guilty, and sad, and more guilty. Yeah, and after that, Peter Parker went on to have more love interests than I can count on my fingers. But the important ones are Mary Jane Watson, who was featured in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, played by Kirsten Dunst, and her lovely hair and nothing else. The Black Cat, who has not been featured in a movie yet, except kind of in The Amazing Spider-Man, because they name drop her, but she doesn't do anything. Who is a sort of anti-hero thief person with boobs.
Think Catwoman.
Yeah, Catwoman, but for Marvel, and kind of cooler. Yeah.
Can you tell me about Venom?
Yeah, sure. Peter Parker got his black suit in a big crossover event called Secret Wars, which in of itself is its own video, so I won't really go into it. But it's a lot of heroes punching each other in the face over on a different planet. Spider-Man got his black suit, and it looks really cool. And after that, it turns out in a shocking twist that the black suit was an alien from another planet, and it was a symbiote. And when Peter found this out, and it was changing his personality, basically changing him into a dick. And in the Spider-Man 3 movies, for some reason, he danced. And also was a dick.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It's really nice.
Yeah, he gets all black stuff. He thinks he's cool.
He turns into a douche.
Yeah, he turns into a douche. That's what the symbiote suit does. It turns you into a douche. And after he rejects it, and because its weaknesses is sound and fire, and he rejects it by punching a big bell because it's lots of sound, and it sort of jumps off him. It attaches itself to Eddie Brock, who at that current state of mind really hated Peter Parker because he was basically Peter Parker was a douche to him because of the black suit. And he was doing whatever that Harry does. And it attached himself to Eddie Brock, and therefore, because the symbiote knew everything Spider-Man knew, and Eddie Brock fucking hated Spider-Man, those two came together and decided to become the Venom in Spider-Man's life. Because they knew his secret identity, they knew where he worked, they knew everything about him. And they decided to be a roided out kind of mini Hulk, and just punch the shit out of him.
With a really long tongue.
Yeah.
That's the most disturbing.
Well, it kind of changes, because at first he was just an asshole, then it became, I'm going to eat your brains.
Zombie?
Yeah, he just ate brains, because the symbiote's kind of weird. And the only other actual important symbiote that had to come from Venom is also Carnage, who is a mix of Eddie Brock's blood and the symbiote, and it attached itself to a serial killer called Cletus Cassidy, who becomes Carnage.
Sorry, just Cletus.
Yeah, Cletus. My buddy Cletus. Who is a serial killer who shared a cell with Eddie Brock.
What's Carnage's colour?
Red and black. And instead of web slinging, he gets stretchy arms, and he makes giant swords and giant fists to punch and cut things. Let's see, black suit. He changed suit again when the Civil War happened, which was basically what the plot of a Captain America 3 will be. Which is, Captain America's all freedom and stuff, people shouldn't be registered when they're superheroes, and Iron Man's fuck you, no, people should be registered. And then the Civil War happened. And Spider-Man's sort of a pivotal moral compass of each side, because he joins Iron Man's, reveals to the world he's Peter Parker, and then Aunt May gets shot. But he also gets a really cool suit, made by Iron Man, and it shoots lasers, and it's all gold and red, and it's really cool. And then he switched sides again to be with Captain America because he realized, I've probably done the wrong thing because the side I'm on are fucking evil. And then after that, that all gets ignored. Oh, he gets married at some point. I forgot that bit.
Wait, didn't he get married
he married
3
to Mary
times?
Jane.
To Mary Jane, and one time he forgot he married. That he married.
No, I'm going to get to that. He sold his soul. He sold his marriage to the devil. One more day. The next most important one, I guess, would be. Not even in actually a particular order. So I'm just going to talk about the most recent one because it's the one I'm thinking about, called Spider-Verse, which is about a bunch of multi-dimensional vampires are hunting down spider people because they lived off their life force. And that includes things like Spider-Ham, which is a tiny cartoon Peter Parker, called Peter Porker, because he's a pig. And an anime one, who's called Spider SP // and it introduces Spider-Man's dead girlfriend as a Spider-Girl, or Spider-Woman, I don't actually know.
Spider-Girl, which girlfriend?
Stacy, the dead one.
Lots of dead ones.
No, there's not. There's only one dead one.
He's literally got one dead one.
Oh, well, he's done pretty well then.
But she comes back as Spider-Man in her universe. Peter Parker died instead. And that's an interesting looking character. Basically, there's a lot of Spider-Mans.
And Spider-Women's and Spider-Girls.
Well, and Spider-Girls. There's a lot of Spider things. Because there's a Spider-Pig. There's a 14-year-old girl in a giant mech suit. There's the Spider-Man that inspired Power Rangers, so he's going around with a giant Megazord, speaking Japanese. It's awesome. Hmm? Yes, like that. Along with the other alternate dimension Spider-Mans, there's another universe called the Ultimate Universe, where they basically used that to reboot and get people more interested in the comics again. Where nothing really interesting happened until recently, where a former good guy turned evil, blew up America, Captain America became president, and there was a new black Spider-Man called Miles Morales, who is like a 14-year-old half Latino, half black kid, who got bitten by the same sort of spider as Spider-Man and gained some different powers. And because of what Marvel's doing currently, where they're mixing the two universes together, people are pretty sure that's the only thing worthwhile coming over. So there'll be like a few different Spider-Men running around. And did I forget anything?
What's happening to Venom right now with Flash?
Oh yeah, Venom for a while was bonded to Eddie Brock, who is a douche. And then later on they got taken off and they got bonded to a multitude of different people, including She-Venom, who looked fucking stupid. And then later got bonded to Peter Parker's former schoolyard bully called Flash, who lost his legs in a war, because they're not allowed to say what war, because then it keeps the time frame of the Marvel Universe more not definite, because it could be happening anytime. Got bonded with the Flash symbiote, the Venom symbiote, and became Agent Venom, which is just Venom with guns.
Did he have legs?
Yes, the legs came with the symbiote, because it does that.
I don't know, he might have been like a weird...
And then now he's in space, because the symbiote's an alien. I can't remember the alien name, but there's a whole planet of just like slushy black things. It looks disgusting. And he's going around in space with the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Wow.
Which we'll talk about in a
That's their whole different thing, because there's two different teams.
Yes.
And so many different people.
Why is Spidey so important to the Avengers that they've decided
Oh
to
right, I
add
even
him
forgot
to
about the new movies. Spider-Man is important to the Marvel Cinematic Universe because he is a staple of Marvel. He's the first Marvel character everyone thinks of. It's either Spider-Man, Captain America, or Iron Man right now, because of the movies. But before, that property came out, the first big superhero franchise was either Blade, which didn't really count because you couldn't sell it to children, or Spider-Man. That was the first big one. It's the first one everyone thought of before Iron Man came out. And he's important because, one, he targets a child demographic because he's like 15 years old. He's awesome because he's Spider-Man. And it'll really be fun to see how they introduce him into this well-connected world, because they normally take time with it, but because they just recently gained the rights, it seems like they could be rushing it, but it depends. But it'll probably be introduced in the post-credit sequence in Captain America 3, with lots of name drops.
No, wait, isn't he going to be in the... Oh no, he's not going to be in Age of Ultron.
No, that's too early.
That's coming out this
Yeah, that's coming out next month.
Woo!
If they somehow he might be in a post-credit sequence there.
Yes.
And if he's not, he'll be definitely in a post-credit sequence in Civil War.
They might do a thing where they just show someone getting webbed, but don't actually show Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like in the original Spider-Man, before 9/11 happened, they had a giant web between the World Trade Centers and a helicopter just stuck there.
Yes.
But then 9/11 happened and they couldn't use that shot anymore.
Because, inappropriate.
Yeah, because of 9/11.
Okay.
9/11 is a whole concept.
I think you need to cheer up and finish.
Right, I think that's pretty much it.
Yay,
Unless-
Spider-Man! Your timeline was so straightforward.
Right?